wellness education, Cannabis Advocates of Nevada present the WeCan 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour with your hosts, Michael McAuliffe and Jen Solis. For the next 60 minutes, we'll take an in-depth look at the cannabis reform revolution sweeping the nation. The phone lines are open at 731-1230. That's 731-1230 or toll-free. Toll-free. 1-866-820-5528. That's 1-866-820-KLAV. Now, let's bring on the hosts. Here is Michael McAuliffe and Jen Solis.
Good afternoon. This is Michael McAuliffe.
And I'm Jen Solis.
Welcome to another edition of the Nevada Cannabis News Hour, where we're the nation's only broadcast radio show on the cannabis movement and the emerging multi-billion-dollar cannabis market, focusing in on Nevada. As I prepare for these shows every week, there seems to be more and more news. I was originally worried when we got started that we might have a hard time filling an hour with this, but as it stands, there is so much out there. 2014 is shaping up to be a watershed year for this movement, for the return of sensibility and the end of governmental reefer madness.
Do you know that we're actually not only on radio today, we're on TV also? A couple different interviews with both you and Vicki Higgins. Yes,
I just got back from Channel 13 where I did an interview which is going to air at 5 and 6 o'clock. But nobody should watch it because they should all listen to KLAV. So let's get right into the news here in Nevada. We have Jane Ann Morrison in the Las Vegas Review-Journal reporting that the Las Vegas City Council may ask for more time on their medical cannabis ordinance. They're looking at possibly pushing back the moratorium date from which is set to expire on March 17th all the way back to September 15th. Bob Coffin, one of our city councilmen, said, "This is not going over well with me. I will not support a 6-month moratorium." This bill, as it stands, includes language that the moratorium could end sooner if the city adopts all the necessary codes and amendments involving either prohibiting or permitting medical cannabis establishments. So it's not something that is set in stone that it would go till September 17th. But
well, Michael,
if they're delaying.
Well, I was going to say, if they're going to September, does that mean that the county can pick up those licenses?
That's absolutely what it means. If the cities in Clark County do not want their allotted 10 establishments, those licenses then would revert to the county. And we already have North Las Vegas and Henderson establishing moratoriums along with the city of Las Vegas. Boulder City has outright voted in a ban. The citizens of Boulder City do not believe in compassionate relief for their citizens, apparently. Bob Coffin said that there are 4 votes to approve medical cannabis within the city limits. That would be himself, Bob Beers, who was one of the co-sponsors of the original legislation in 2001, Steve Ross, and Ricky Barlow. So it looks like we have the ability to get this stuff passed, but will the mayor let this happen, or will she just try to strong-arm people behind the scenes?
Well, speaking of the mayor, isn't Coffee with the Mayor coming up soon? Coffee with the Mayor is coming up soon, and it's in Savros Anthony's district.
Oh, we should all go. Everybody listening should go down. It's on February 20th. We will no, it can't be on February 20th. That must be March 20th.
It must be on March 20th.
Our back office here, you're hitting that 420 moment a little early, I think. So anyway, Bob Coffin is unhappy with this slow walk that's getting done. And he said it's been a slow walk for 6 months. And he says it looks like it's stalling, even if we're not. I don't want the legal guys to run this train. And what Councilman Coffin was referring to is the fact that City Attorney Brad Jerbick had initially advised the council against going forward with writing ordinances because even simple possession of cannabis, medical or adult use, remains a federal felony. He said tax dollars raised for the city would constitute drug money, as if the city's not taking gambling and liquor money already.
Well, that's what I've long been saying, that if the states are accepting tax money, that they're culpable for the crime also. Isn't that the case? I mean, if we're committing a federal crime by selling it, but we're giving taxes to the state, isn't that by de facto that they're also accepting drug money?
Well, that seems to be a one-way street. They use it
okay.
to prosecute individuals, but exempt themselves. Brad Jervik, who I just mentioned, said he was fearful of losing his law license if he advised the council to go forward. And my thought on that is, if we had, and Mayor Pro Tem Stavros Anthony also said he was afraid that he could be prosecuted as a drug dealer by the federal government if he moves forward in approving these regulations. All these fearful leaders, if we elect people to lead us, they should lead. And if they are fearful of these things, they should step aside.
And if they are hired for a job, they should do the job that they were hired for. Mr. Brad Jervik is there to be the counsel for the city, not, have his own opinion on it. If the city says that they want to go forward, then it is his job to either go forward or move out of the way and let someone else go forward. But what we learned is that he was not going forward and also telling his other people, no, this is my project.
Right. So he wasn't allowing anyone else in his office to work on that. So if Mr. Jervik does not want to advise the city council on that, then really he should resign that position as city attorney and give it to somebody who's not afraid. Somebody perhaps like Bruce Gale could be a great city attorney moving forward on this. And
Sure.
the same thing, if the mayor pro tem does not want to carry out the wishes of the people who voted for him and by a clear majority of 3-1 support medical cannabis and access to it, then he should do one final act of public service and resign.
I'm calling for his resignation now.
There you go. All right. So we'll see what happens with the city council on Thursday, I believe it is. They are reading the language into the record for this motion to continue the moratorium and to develop these regulations. And so there will be no public comment at that one, no discussion on it. So there's no reason for people to go down to that city council meeting. But we will let you know when the next one comes up that it will be important.
Well, there is a county commission meeting that people should be aware of, and we have that story a little bit later. So hold on for that news. Officials say that the city is going to completely and the state is going to completely blow the April 1st deadline to begin accepting medical marijuana dispensary and growers license applications because of all of the regulations haven't been approved yet. State Health Department Manager Marla McDade Williams said that the department will have a staff ready to go by April 1st, but that until the state passes regulations, there won't be anything to approve or deny. She says that the soonest that licenses will go out will probably be in September of 2014. That kind of pushes it back, doesn't it?
It does. It only pushes it back several months. And in the greater scheme of things, where we've been waiting for this for 14 years, it doesn't seem like a big wait. Where it is a wait and is something more than just an inconvenience, or is for patients who rely on this medication to help them through their suffering and to make life bearable for some of them. And that's not everyone, of course. But at what point do we say that the process of bureaucracy is more important than the compassionate relief of suffering people, especially those who are our friends and neighbors, fellow Nevadans?
That's true. I've had several reporters call me and ask me, where are patients getting their medication? And I said, where have they ever been getting their medication? This has been the issue all along, and I'm really happy that you're calling attention to it now. But this has been my point from the beginning: is safe access for people that are sick, isn't always easy, because now you have to learn how to score meds.
Yes, absolutely. And the problem with the Nevada regulations to this point is that it forced people to either produce medicine when they might not have a green thumb. They might not know what to do, or it would force them into the black market. And as you know, several years ago, there was a burgeoning movement, a green summer in 2010, where people relied on what the Obama administration said, and they started opening dispensaries. And then,
That's true.
The jackboot of oppression came down upon them. And who really suffered in that, besides those entrepreneurs? It was the patients.
The patients had been used to getting medication from a reliable source, which were these shops. And then these shops were raided, and that was cut off. I guess it did force one good thing. A lot of people came out of the closet and started being activists at that point, and really started getting concerned when they said, well, I've been going and visiting an illegal shop, and weren't even aware that it was illegal or, what the state was. They knew that they had their card and they could walk into these shops. They're really starting to blow up again. I guess as Tick Seegerbloom pointed out in our inaugural episode, that there are places that you can get it now delivered, and there are now starting to be brick and mortars that are going up, and all of these places are illegal, all of them.
Yes, they're illegal federally, and under the current law, the state law, they could be considered illegal. Although the Supreme Court, Donald Mosley, ruled that segment of the law unconstitutional, and then the Nevada Supreme Court decided to punt. They did not want to take up the issue, and they remanded it back down to the lower court for trial.
Well, you have to be aware that the reason that they remanded it back down to court is because they said that it wasn't a conviction, that Mosley just said it was unconstitutional and that it couldn't be challenged in a higher court because there was no clear conviction of said law.
Right. In legal terms, the justices said it was not ripe for their ruling on it, that he needed to actually be convicted and therefore have his rights diminished in order for them to take up the case.
So couldn't one of these persons that had been convicted of it go back and challenge it and get it sent to Supreme Court?
Well, that's interesting. We'll have to have Gary Modafieri, who argued that case before the Nevada Supreme Court, on, and we'll ask him that question.
That's a great idea.
We'll do that in a future episode and get back to you. Meanwhile, also in Nevada, according to the Las Vegas Sun and reported last Wednesday, February 26th, the draft regulations were released by the Clark County Zoning and Business Licensing Department, and they will be introduced to the county commissioners tomorrow. In this, dispensaries will be allowed to locate within commercially zoned districts like most other retail businesses. Testing labs will be covered under this, cultivation facilities, and infused products facilities which will make edibles and the like, will also be covered under this. I've taken a look at these regulations, and I didn't see anything there aside from one that troubled me. Everything looks like it's thoughtful, moving forward, and that the county wants to do this.
What troubled you?
That one thing that troubled me is they're having separation distances of anywhere from 300 to 1,000 feet from these facilities to whether it be schools or churches or residential areas and that sort of stuff. Clearly, the legislative intent was that these be treated as pharmacies, and you can see that in the statute in several points. And nowhere are there separation distances for a Walgreens or a CVS or anything like that. So this is an area where this industry is once again being signaled out, and it seems that once again, they're treating this as if it is some kind of toxic substance. Really, although I would say to their credit, the county is moving forward in saying they want a wide distribution across the county so that patients do have access in different neighborhoods, that they won't have to travel down to one industrial corridor, let's say, and get their meds.
Well, I was going to say, no, not neighborhoods, 300 feet from a neighborhood.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Once again, they are over-regulating this. They have concerns about crime, even though studies from California and Colorado both show that because of the increased security, cameras, armed security around dispensaries and cultivation facilities make the neighborhood actually safer. These people who are regulating this and making these decisions are erring on the side of caution, they would say, being a little timid, I would say.
I would say so too, and I think that what they don't realize that cannabis patients form communities, and these communities may center around a shop, and that usually actually makes the shop or the area more safe because everybody's kind of watching out for their neighbor. Absolutely
true, and you find that cannabis businesses especially are cognizant of being good neighbors. Because of complaints that happen, they don't want to arouse public ire, or they don't want to be on bad terms with their neighbors, and they do everything that they can in order to be extra good neighbors. And so they will sometimes provide security for an entire commercial complex rather than just their own facility. So we'll see what happens with this. The county is going to be taking public comment, and certainly WeCan is going to be there tomorrow, and we will let you know next week what happened. On the On the good side of this separation issue, because the county commissioners have determined that this is going to be special use permits, they have the ability to waive those zoning restrictions and those distance restrictions anytime that they want. So we'll see what happens on a case-by-case basis. The other thing that I would note about this is that the county, in addition to the state fees, which are sizable, the county is also putting out a $2,500 pre-qualification application fee and a $5,000 application fee for these facilities. So both the state and the county are going to make some significant revenues out of this.
Sure. I've heard of that. I'd like to ask you, tomorrow's item is item like number 65, so I don't think it's going to be heard until about 1 p.m. But do you remember what they did to us some time back where it was an item number that was way down the line, and we had waited for hours and hours and hours, and then they said, oh, well, we're not going to take public comment on this. Our time for public comment was back at the beginning of this. Do you think
indeed, and that was actually the city council rather than the county commission. But what you would have here is there will be a public comment period at the start of the meeting, so people can come up and speak about it then. At the last county commission that they discussed this, Commissioner Sisolak did have some brief public comment, but he was at that time taking more questions from the public about the program rather than actually making comment. He did promise me and various other people who were at the meeting that there would be ample time for public comment, and so we're expecting that public comment period will be inclusive of tomorrow. So we will be down there. Sure. We will be ready to spring to the defense of patients.
Sure. I'd like to announce that we also have a Patients First meeting Saturday at 2 p.m. at the Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf across from UNLV. We have Ted Moody, a candidate for sheriff, coming down to speak to the group. So if you'd like to become involved, come down to Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf across from UNLV at 2 p.m. tomorrow.
All right, and we're going to take a short break now to hear from our sponsors, and we would ask that you please patronize them, and we will be right back. Cannabis has been used as a healing medicine for over 5,000 years with no toxic side effects. Is it right for you? The professionals at Dr. Reefer are here to help. Now accepting new patients. Make an appointment today at 428-0000. Bring your medical records, or if you don't have them, their staff will work to document your qualifying condition with a 99% approval rate. If you have any of the following conditions: cancer, AIDS, muscle spasm diseases, severe nausea, severe pain, Crohn's disease, glaucoma, or PTSD, call Dr. Reefer today for your free consultation and their money-back guarantee. If you don't qualify, you don't pay. Call 702-428-0000 to get your Nevada medical marijuana card today.
WeCan 702 is a Nevada cannabis community. We are a 501c3 nonprofit that meets in Southern Nevada. We are a social group that started in Las Vegas for patient support. We've been active in the community for over 5 years. If you'd like to join us on any of our events or parties, please contact us through Facebook at WeCan 702, on Meetup at www.meetup.com/WeCan 702. Our website is www.wecan702.org. Be a part of the Nevada Cannabis Reform Revolution. Please join us and donate today.
You're listening to the WeCan 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour. The phone lines are open at 731-1230. Now, here again, your hosts, Michael McAuliffe and Jen Solis.
Hi, welcome back from our break. I'd like to thank Pulse Glass. Last month, they sponsored 5 patient cards for WeCan. Yay, Pulse Glass. They are an award-winning glass company. They have won awards many years in a row with the Cannabis Cup for their superb glass pieces. And Michael, you have some.
Okay, well, moving on to the news beyond Nevada now, we see that Governor Jerry Brown next door in California was on NBC's Meet the Press this past Sunday, and he said that he's not convinced that legalizing cannabis is a good idea because the population needs to stay alert. The problem with anything, Brown said, is a certain amount is okay, but there is a tendency to go to extremes. And all of a sudden, if there's advertising and legitimacy, how many people can get stoned and still have a great state or a great nation? The world's pretty dangerous, Governor Brown said. Very competitive. I think we need to stay alert, if not 24 hours a day, more than some of the potheads might be able to put together.
Oh my gosh.
Spoken like a true 75-year-old man. Whatever happened to Governor Moonbeam and going out with Linda Ronstadt? A recent poll found that for the first time ever, a majority of Californians support legalizing cannabis, and more than half the U.S. states are also considering decriminalizing or legalizing cannabis, since Washington and Colorado did so a little over a year ago. It just is amazing to me that that he would espouse such an indefensible position, even in his own state. People like Brad Pitt, people like Harrison Ford, who smoke every day.
I think he's listening to too many people at the country club.
Yeah, I think so. As they're sipping their martinis and their Chablis, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but sauce for the goose. This idea that we need to stay alert 24 hours a day. Don't we have a professional military to do that? Isn't there a surveillance state that's maybe being a little too active 24 hours a day around the world?
I thought that's what the cops were for.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and to counter what he's saying, there's already alcohol out there, and pot's not new. Anybody who wants to smoke it or otherwise consume it is likely already doing so. I don't think we're going to see legalization anywhere making a wave of new potheads, as he calls them. It's a case where we on this show and in the movement in general are not encouraging anyone to use this substance, but considering that mankind has been doing so for 5,000 years, if people want to do it, they're going to do it. We don't think that lives should be ruined, that people should get criminal records, lose their assets, and be thrown in cages for doing so. So there's something really offensive about this kind of statement, inferring that citizens are merely slaves or tools of the state, and that their sole purpose is to provide a certain level of productivity. This idea that we have to be alert 24 hours a day to be competitive. There are plenty of competitive people out there.
I was going to say, I mean, in Silicon Valley and in California alone, there's so much industry that goes on that is fueled by cannabis. And don't tell me that those computer programmers aren't, imbibing. I know a ton of them. That's where they get their inspiration.
Indeed. So moving on from Governor Moonbeam, we have oh, look at what time it is.
All right, today's 420 moment. We pay tribute to a member of the community that deserves special recognition. We have Reverend Jack Roberto. Many people know Reverend Jack as a cantheist or cannabis activist. He is a longtime cannabis activist that has lost his fight to cancer this year. And so our 420 moment today is for Reverend Jack.
Jack was a very gentle soul. I never saw him raise his voice to anyone. No. He was always a caring member of the community who would show up whenever he was called upon and take part in these events. And he was not a leader in that sense. He would, and not that he was a follower, but he would go along to bring his support and his strength in numbers to the community. And he was a sweet guy, and he's going to be missed by everybody that knew him.
Sure. Yes, he is, as a matter of fact.
All right. So moving on from, and not quickly, but we just have limited time. In the new issue of Washington Monthly magazine, they have extensive coverage of the challenges associated with the legalization of cannabis. And their editor-in-chief, Paul Glataris explained that two experts who have advised Washington State on its cannabis legalization, Mark Kleinman and Jonathan Calkins, warned that the current approach being taken by Washington and other states will lead to a public health disaster. It will result in a market dominated by large commercial interests whose profits will come not from occasional pot smokers, but from habitual daily or even hourly users. He's worried that we'll see marijuana commercials on Super Bowl broadcasts, pot brownies at 7-Eleven checkout counters, a vast increase in abuse, minimal tax revenues, and government regulators too weak to do anything about it. So I took a look at these articles briefly, and they were a bit too extensive to go into immediately today, but you guys might want to go out there and check out the Washington Monthly online, and where you can read these stories and make up your own minds, make up your own opinions, and send us a note. Send it to Jen S. at WeCan702.org or Michael M. at WeCan702.org, and we'll field your questions and concerns and address them in a future broadcast of the Nevada Cannabis News Hour. I think this idea that they worry about the market being dominated by large commercial interests. I think that's a valid point, actually.
Well, with Viagra on TV every 3 seconds.
Well, that's true, but what we're seeing in Nevada is that these licenses seem to be gravitating in the direction of the applicants who have the most money, and that's something that we really do want to avoid. We would like, as Justice Louis Brandeis said many years ago, to have the states be a social laboratory for the nation.
Sure,
and so in
diverse.
that extent, we would like to see in the county for-profit, nonprofit corporations, publicly traded, privately held, big, little, to get the widest array of experimentation out there to see what works and what doesn't.
Sure. I mean, you have to have diversity to have a social model. If you don't have diversity, then there's not really a social model there. It's just a hierarchy.
So his other points about commercials on the Super Bowl broadcast, well, I would say it was as big of a push as you could possibly have, that the two teams that were in the Super Bowl this year were both from states that legalized cannabis, and so there was more than enough talk about that by pundits and broadcasters without anyone having to air a single commercial. And pot brownies at 7-Eleven.
As if. I wish.
Yeah, as if. Right. That's a ways down the line. So let's cover one more thing.
Well, we have a caller on the line.
Wow. Hey, caller. Hi, Lee.
Hi.
How are you? What is your question?
So this is Lee from Las Vegas. And at the beginning of the show, you were talking about these moratoriums. From the patient's perspective, the new law has some verbiage about right to grow, as it has always been a right to grow state.
Yes.
It also has some verbiage about taking away that right to grow.
Mm-hmm.
What can we do to ensure that right to grow remains?
Well,
we've waited 13, 14 years to get dispensaries. Now they're putting moratoriums. And it costs a goodly amount of money to start up a small grow in your house, like
Sure.
a patient would.
Thanks for that question, Lee. The thing that I would like to say, having worked with this law for many years now, is that if you look at the actual Article 4, Section 38 of the Constitution, there is no right to grow. It says that the legislature shall provide for access, appropriate methods of supply for authorized patients. Nowhere in that constitutional amendment does it say anything that there is a right to grow. What the state legislature did in 2001 was to shy away from the idea of dispensaries because they were worried about federal raids coming in, and they mandated that patients be self-sufficient and have to grow their own medication. That's not a right to grow exactly. And indeed, if this were a right, an inalienable right, then no one would need a state-authorized license to be part of this program. But instead, what we have is a state program that was developed that issues privileged licenses, just like driver's licenses, where you don't have a right to drive on the roads in Nevada. It is a privilege that you get by obtaining a license. And so in that sense, there really is no right there or to be taken away or to be restored. But I do agree with you that we, the people, need to go and enshrine a right and make it absolutely clear in the legislature that we can move forward and that individual patients can be self-sufficient if they want to, and that they are not prohibited from that, especially after thousands of them have been forced to go to the expenditure over the years of developing of buying equipment, devoting space, and devoting time to learn how to do this.
Well, Michael, also, if you look at it in the aspect of that, we're allowed to have 2.5 ounces, 2.5 ounces a month or every 2 weeks. So that would be 5 ounces a month. And how much is the going price? About
at a retail rate,
$400.
yeah, that's $2,000 a month.
That's $2,000 a month. And for 12 months,
$24,000 a year.
$24,000 a year. Even if I made $100,000 a year, I would say that a quarter of my income going to cannabis is a significant expense.
And fortunately, there is a loophole in the law that allows for patients to continue to grow if they can demonstrate economic hardship. And so even if you are making $100,000 pre-tax, you can demonstrate that hardship by having to go into that market.
Well,
So there are, and WeCan was very much involved in making sure that those exemptions were built into the final bill. So people who are out there and are worried about their ability to be self-sufficient in this battle-born, independent Western state, they are going to be able to do it. So they shouldn't fret about losing that right.
Well, not only that, if you have a special strain, if you have a special strain that is good for whatever ails you, then and you are the only one that has that strain, then you pretty much can take care of yourself. And that's part of the law also, that if the dispensary near you does not have the strain that you require for the illness that you have, then you can retain your ability to grow.
So by all means, if you want more information on this, come to the WeCan meetings and talk to our activists and advocates at length. Before we go to break and introduce our guest, I'd like to give you one story that is literally hot off the press and was handed to me just a few minutes ago, where GOP lawmakers are pressing the administration on federal cannabis policy. And what we had is the deputy administrator for the Drug Enforcement Administration, Thomas Harrigan, testified today, before a House Oversight panel that looked at easing laws on growing marijuana in the country. He said, we should not abandon science and fact in favor of public opinion. He echoed previous testimony from James Capra, the DEA's chief of operations, who told the Senate Judiciary panel that going down the path to legalization in this country is reckless and irresponsible.
Wow.
The subcommittee chairman, Representative John Mica of Florida, said the country is in a state of conflict and chaos right now over marijuana policy.
No, we're not in conflict. Everybody wants cannabis except for like the DEA,
Well, it's their reefer madness.
It is reefer madness.
There,
I mean, what is it, like 67% of Americans are in support of cannabis?
A clear majority, 58%, from what I saw in the last Gallup poll. Given that this is an election year, which can tip the balance of power in Congress, although not really, the gerrymandering has made it so that the Republicans are going to maintain the lower house no matter what happens. The administration has said it continues to pursue dangerous criminals, but Obama himself last month in an interview declared cannabis no more dangerous than alcohol and contrasted it with harder drugs, including coke and methamphetamine. And the thing that calls out to me in this is where this deputy administrator for the DEA says we should not abandon science in fact in favor of public opinion. I couldn't agree more. But the problem is, it is the DEA itself which has been obstructionist for years and years about allowing scientific tests. Despite the fact that in 1988, Francis Young, a DEA administrative law judge, said that in its natural form, cannabis is one of the safest substances on the planet, the DEA consistently refuses to allow any research in there. So for them to come back and say we should not abandon science when they actually prohibit science from occurring is duplicitous, self-serving, and people should be in the streets with pitchforks and torches, metaphorically, of course, and as they would be in France or as they are in Egypt or in the Ukraine or elsewhere. But, we're a little too concerned with who's
No, actually, what's happening is
Idol.
that there are people that are out protesting and there are media blackouts that happen.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, and you find out from alternate news that these things are happening. People are protesting. The media blackout is just to keep people passive. Well, speaking of passivity, let's go to break.
Let's go to break. You can take another hit. There seems to be something still in there.
Okay.
The WeCan 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour is the nation's only broadcast radio show where you can get the latest news from Nevada and beyond. Learn about the local billion-dollar industry and cannabis reform revolution, which is sweeping the nation. Join host Michael McAuliffe, Jen Solis, and their guests every Tuesday afternoon from 4 to 5 here on KLAV. Knowledge is power, and this is powerful stuff. The WeCan 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour, this Tuesday afternoon at 4.
Do you need help getting your Nevada medical marijuana card? Dr. Reefer is now accepting new patients. There are no medical records required. We have a doctor on staff to give you a thorough physical examination. There is a 99% approval rate for patients. They also have a money-back guarantee. If you don't qualify, you don't pay. Free consultation is available. Call 702-428-0000. 702-428-0000 to get your Nevada medical marijuana card today.
You're listening to the WeCan 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour. The phone lines are open at 731-1230. Now, here again, your hosts, Michael McAuliffe and Jen Solis.
And we're back with our guest this afternoon, Dr. Stephen Frye. Stephen is a medical doctor. He is a psychiatrist. He is a scientist. Stephen, you and I first met at the Democratic State Convention back in 2010. I was out there gathering signatures to include a platform plank endorsing the creation of a medical cannabis industry in the state. Now, you may recall in that floor fight that ensued, the party leadership spoke out against my position, and yet the rank and file supported us with over 90% of the floor vote, and you certainly supported us. Mm-hmm. And so here we are 4 years later, and I'm seeing a great change in attitude in party leadership on both sides of the aisle. Why do you think these party bosses have been so opposed to something that the public clearly endorses? And have you also noticed a change in attitude on this issue in the last year or so?
Well, first of all, I want to say thanks for having me on the show, and I want to thank you for being a pioneer and activist in this movement who has given of his blood, sweat, tears, and freedom on behalf of the cannabis users, most especially medical, but there's no problem with the recreational users either, and it's just a pleasure to know you and to help in this process. I briefly have been prescribing medical cannabis in California. I was there in '96 when Prop 215 passed. I prescribed it to hundreds of patients, and I get a big kick now out of Carolyn Goodman and Mayor Cashel and Senator Harry Reid. They know one person who has gotten better on medical marijuana, and all of a sudden they're in favor. The fact that I'm a medical doctor and treated hundreds, that doesn't count. But the fact that they know one, that's the big issue.
It's usually first-hand knowledge.
Yeah, and that's fine, and I appreciate that also. In answer to your question about how things have changed, when I ran for Congress 2 years ago, I was the kooky psychiatrist who was talking about legalizing marijuana. Now I'm known as a reformer who was ahead of the curve.
Oh, Stephen, I couldn't agree with you more.
It's amazing how people
I used to be a pariah. Now I'm a prophet.
Isn't it amazing how our stock has gone up in 2 years with Colorado and Washington, and the reports that Colorado has $184 million worth of tax coming in, and all the predictions are wrong. The marijuana that is used today is clearly more potent and toxic than it was when you and I were in college. But
Potent, yes. Toxic, I disagree.
No.
Well, I
Like,
shouldn't
I
say
just-
toxic. That's not more potent. Absolutely not toxic. More potent, and it's still the safest recreational, over-the-counter, or prescription drug in history. You simply cannot die from marijuana. Tylenol, ibuprofen, and aspirin, hundreds die every year. Marijuana, nobody. And so when people say to me, hey, how can you as a doctor promote that? I say, for two reasons. Number one, it's safer than anything I ever write with my prescription pad. And number two, I've prescribed it to hundreds of patients. I never got a call late at night from somebody with a drug-drug interaction or anything else, as I did with all my other prescriptions. So I'm fully aware of how safe and wonderful it is medically and recreationally.
So what are you hearing from your party on this?
Well, I would say that cautious ignoring me would be the way to put it. They don't return my emails. They don't return my phone calls. And so they're pretending I don't exist. But as of this Friday, 5 o'clock, if there's nobody else running for governor as I am, all of a sudden they'll be paying attention to me because I am the one that has the platform that can, in fact, defeat our failed Governor Brian Sandoval.
Well, let's talk
you
about-
just jumped on that.
Let's
So-
talk about that. That you announced yesterday that you're running for the office of the governor of Nevada. I don't think that's really breaking news to say that your party's eagerly awaiting the announcement.
You have a side job in comedy, ma'am? Jen, you should take up comedy.
Occasionally. So, do you think that, given that it's important for people to have a choice in elections and not let the incumbents run unopposed, what's been the response, of your
for
party?
The people
You said
that know me,
Yeah.
not the leadership.
Okay.
The people that know me, caucus leaders, people that I have seen, because I ran for Congress 2 years ago and I attended all of the caucus meetings in the southern Nevada area. I've always been respected. Even though I was far ahead of the curve and people thought that it wasn't time to do it, I always have been treated with respect. And now that we are seeing the incredible success with Colorado, and Washington is going to follow, and I have studied the success of the Netherlands and Portugal for years, so I know the success. I know the benefits. I know that this is safe, effective medication. So now that the tide has turned, everybody is saying, we're really glad you're running. We need somebody to run, non-leadership, mind you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Everybody other than leadership and state elected officials. All of the local people are saying, we need somebody like you. And the polls are with me overwhelmingly. The Retail Association of Nevada poll, done in Nevada, before Colorado, had a 54% support for legalizing marijuana for education, for all recreational marijuana, and only 42% against. Well, as we all know in politics, 10 points is a landslide. That's a 12-point landslide. Now the polls that are nationally show 58%, but for Democrats, it's incredible. We're 65%, and independents are 65%. The only ones that are still against it are the Republicans, only 35% support, which is fine with me because we've got a surplus of registered Democrats in the state. And the Libertarians love me. They invited me to their presidential nominating convention in Denver in 2008 when my book first came out to address them, and they wanted me to become a Libertarian, which I was unwilling to do. They were a little too far out on too many issues we don't have time to discuss. But the fact of the matter is, the Democrats who support, as you have seen, who support legalizing marijuana, the independents, the libertarians, there is a distinct pathway, especially given Governor Sandoval's huge failures in this state. We are worse than Alabama and Mississippi in education, in mental health, in healthcare, in prisons. Every single system that I look at is a failure.
Really? I mean, I was aware of the educational, but so many others also.
Oh, absolutely. According to Consumer Reports, we have the worst hospitals in the nation. There's a joke in the medical community here. Where do you go when you get sick in Las Vegas?
McCarran Airport.
There you go. That's exactly right.
I was going to say the morgue.
Well, that's another choice. Healthcare is horrible. Mental health is at the bottom, and now we've closed the emergency rooms, the emergency room for psychiatric patients, which closed 4 other emergency rooms. The whole state is in a case of chaos, and as John Ralston calls him, Governor Sunshine, he has a smile on his face and says, I didn't have any new taxes, so I'm a success. I'm sorry. No new taxes is not leadership. It's not solving a single problem. The tax that the voters of this state support is the tax that I'm running on. And one of the key points that will bring in conservatively, according to the legislature's own budget office up to $500 million if we tax it the way the state of Washington does.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
But I would worry about that because the state of Washington imposes a 25% tax each step or
I
three
understand.
times.
Yes.
And so at that kind of rate, you would be driving people back into the black market.
everything
anyway.
has to work itself out, but it's still going to be hundreds of millions. It's that, and no matter how you slice it, it's going to be a minimum of 1 or 2 or 300 million. That's where we are, and we are a huge tourist state.
Yes, we are.
People come here to party.
So,
Absolutely.
Dr. Frye, you're taking a strong stand against prohibition and the criminal activity that goes along with it in favor of a regulatory system that funnels revenue away from gangs and to the state. Could you elaborate on your plan that would encompass should you occupy the governor's mansion?
I have never heard one person state that our war on drugs has a single success. It does not. We captured Guzman this past month, the biggest drug war leader in the world. Now, when
And he was a bad man.
Oh, no question. When Montgomery Ward goes out of business, it's out of business. When Pan American Airlines goes out of business, it's out of business. When we capture a drug lord, there's not 1 ounce less drugs. It just means there's a gunfight to see who takes over the cartel. But we make it a front page story as if we have a victory in the drug war. We captured a drug cartel king. Excuse me, it means nothing.
We just created a vacuum.
All we did was get somebody else in that position. There's a gunfight and 12 administrators underneath the cartel leader to see who takes over. We do not have a single victory in our drug war. We have the highest drug use in the world. We have 5% of the world's population. We use 60% of the world's drug. Drugs are cheaper and more available now than they were at the beginning of the drug war. So there is no success in the drug war. The success is in the Netherlands, 40 years.
Yep.
Legalize, tax, and control, and in Portugal now 12 years. We do not learn in this country from other countries. We're very arrogant. We know everything.
And with the numbers you cite, it is hard to imagine the prohibitionist argument that, well, if we legalize, we're going to get more druggies and this and that. Everybody in America
everybody in America that wants to buy pot can buy it on any corner.
Amen.
And in truth, the biggest problem in this country, as I'm sure you're well aware of, is not cannabis or even heroin. It's prescription drugs, prescription
Absolutely.
opiates.
And it's because we have had this obsession, preoccupation with drugs for the drug war that every teenager thinks drugs. That's what we talk about.
And you see both
we can't turn the clock all the way back. We'll never do that.
And in the Netherlands and in states which have regulated medical cannabis, teen use is actually lower than in states which have turned a blind eye to it.
Way less.
They've shown that the number of addicts neither rise nor fall. They remain constant because it's a social issue. It's not a criminal issue. So those people are going to be scoring if it's legal, if it's illegal, whatever it is. They're still going to be going after this. You're not creating criminals. You're creating prisoners out of a social issue.
And it's incredible. I work in the prison system. I just finished up last week. I started I spent the entire legislative session last time up in Carson City for the whole 4 months, and I was a volunteer lobbyist. Got to know all of the legislators very well.
I saw you.
And yes, indeed. And had this come up for a vote, we had enough people to carry the day. It was leadership, and especially when Governor Sandoval came out against it, that was the kibosh.
And it was not just the governor. The Speaker of the Assembly, Marilyn Kirkpatrick, is very much against this. Yes. And there was a bill, AB 402, which would have regulated the adult use of cannabis. And the Speaker of the Assembly did not want to give it a hearing. And given the fact that the governor said he would veto, it took the impetus out of it.
I always loved how she told me that while she was smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
We're going to go to a caller who's been patiently waiting. Shirley, welcome to the show.
Shirley, welcome to the show.
Maybe not. Okay.
Shirley, she's not there.
I guess Shirley's gone invisible. Oh, there she is.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Shirley.
What's your question?
Yes. I had a lot of questions. I heard you guys talking about privileges, and I want to know: is it a privilege to grow vegetables? Is that the same as really driving? Because in the end, it's just a fucking plane, you cock.
Well,
Wow.
thank you for that strong, passionate opinion.
Surely you just.
Yes, it is. It is just a plant, and there should be no restrictions
And
on
I
growing
think Shirley,
plants.
given that violent language outbreak, needs to chill and smoke a little pot. Frankly, I think that she has indications medically to calm down.
Well, doctor, if that's your advice, we on this show do not counsel that anyone use any federally illegal substances. We just don't think they should go to jail for it.
I agree.
So let me ask you then, what kind of personal experience and history do you have that would qualify you for being governor? Do you think that your lack of public service in the elected sector is going to be a help or a hindrance in this election cycle?
Certainly it would be nice if I had been the lieutenant governor for 5 years. That would not hurt at all, but it's not a disadvantage. I have been an activist for years. I was the mental health director in Sonoma County from 77 to 81, and I ran a department of 125 employees with a $6.5 million budget.
Wow.
And so I have some experience running organizations and budgets. I was a professor in the medical school. People used to think of me as a one-horse pony. All I knew about was marijuana. Well, in fact, I am a physician who was a professor at our own UNR School of Medicine, so I know a lot about healthcare and medicine. I know a lot about mental health and the fact that both of those systems are broken in the state of Nevada. My oldest son was a genius, and I became involved in gifted education. I was a 5-county representative to the California Association of the Gifted, and I went to their conferences and met with them on several occasions. So I'm fully aware of the value of gifted education, which is grossly underfunded and underused in this state. And it costs basically nothing to make every 4th high school a gifted high school. I went to a gifted high school, and the day I got the acceptance to Boston Latin School, my mother baked a cake when I came home that night, and because we knew if you graduated Boston Latin School, you were going to a top-notch college, which I did, Boston University, then a top-notch medical school, George Washington Medical School, and so we have to shift away from No Child Left Behind, which is an emphasis on the bottom 20%. And the job creators and geniuses of the future, in the top 20%, we have to cater to them. They're the Bill Gates and the Oprah Winfreys that we need to take care of ourselves. So I have considerable experience in a number of arenas. And could I do a worse job than Governor Sandoval? The answer is absolutely not.
There you go. Now, I agree with what you're saying, that you speak out on this issue and you get labeled a pot guy. The same thing has happened to me over the years. And I'm sure that like me, you are concerned about any number of issues, but what happens, you take a hot button issue like this, you go public with it, and people want to pigeonhole you and label you and turn you into a one-trick pony.
Correct.
So you obviously have a lot of other plans for the state besides just this one issue.
Absolutely.
But I think that this issue is the one that is going to wind up defining you in this campaign.
And at this time in the evolution of our society, with the popularity of this issue and the need for tax money, last time around it was a disadvantage and prevented me from winning. This time around it's a big advantage, especially if the governor sticks to his current anti-tax, anti-marijuana legalization stance. So it's amazing how times change, and timing is everything.
That's true.
All right. Well, obviously, law enforcement has a very negative view of cannabis regulation, which is, in my opinion at least, is more about budgetary funding than it is about harm reduction.
Absolutely.
And since drug law reform is an important part of your platform, how do you envision getting law enforcement to support your candidacy?
I don't think they will support it. However, my answer to them is very simple. When I have talked to law enforcement people and I ask them, what percentage of your day is spent in alcohol-related issues, DUIs, domestic violence, child abuse, barroom brawls, etc., I never get an answer of less than 50%. And then when I say to them, what percentage of your day is spent in marijuana behavioral problems, not just possession, what percent of your day is spent in problems related to marijuana, the answer is always 0. They're not spending any time with marijuana-related behavioral problems. They're spending all their time with the alcohol-related problems. And the president's statement that marijuana is no more dangerous than alcohol is ludicrous. Alcohol kills 88,000 people a year. Marijuana kills none.
Absolutely true.
And marijuana is proved by the scientific section of our government, the Food and Drug Administration, available as Marinol, a prescription marijuana. It's the political side that makes it illegal.
Although, in truth, Marinol is, given that there are 66 so far discovered cannabinoids in cannabis that are active, that's like saying that lettuce is a full salad. Marinol is only just that one aspect
it is, but it's THC, tetrahydrocannabinol.
Yeah.
And what it does show is that when the medical side of our government has looked at this, they have said it's harmless and beneficial. Mm-hmm. It's not a class 1 addictive heroin type Schedule 1 drug. It is safe, and the doctors have said that.
Because what we're seeing now is that people are moving from states that have no cannabis laws into states that have CBD for Charlotte's Web, for kids, epilepsy, that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Doc, we're going to have to wrap it up right now. I hear the music coming on, which is telling me we're about out of time. I want to thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Let me ask you, where can
back.
people go for information or if they want to volunteer or contribute?
The website, Frye, Frye, number 4, governor.com will be up in the next couple of days. It's in the final stages now, Frye4governor.com. Thank you so much for having me on.
And thank you, Stephen,
Thank you.
for coming. It's always enlightening to speak with you. All right, and that wraps up another show for the Nevada Cannabis News. Come on back next week. We're going to have a very special guest. We're scheduled to have a recently retired DEA agent on.
I might be absent.
For a long discussion and debate on this. So I'm sure you'll find it very interesting. Don't miss it. See you next time.